Member Amy Adams.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Mr Speaker, Budget 2011 and the supplementary estimates relating to the year 2010-2011 are, of course, a continuation, sir, of the prudent and sensible economic management that the national-led government has been rolling out to New Zealand since the election in 2008. So when we took the reins of office, the global crisis was at its peak. New Zealand, though, had gone into recession 3 years before anyone else. Our export sector was gasping its dying breaths under 9 years of a Labour government that thought only governments could create jobs and that the private sector should be kept out of the way and should be shrunk down, and that government spending was the panacea to all ills. So they delivered us lollies that we couldn't afford in a desperate bid to cling to power. And when this government took the reins in 2008, we started on a track of slowly turning the large tanker that is this economy around to a point where our economy is on a growth track, it is sustainable, it is in the phase of job creation, income growth and a raise in the standard of living for all New Zealanders. And, sir, that isn't something that's happened by accident. And, in fact, not only have we had to contend with the situation as we inherited it, not only have we had to contend with the continuation of the global crisis, but, sir, we have had to contend with some horrific, unforeseen, and I'm afraid to take it into fiscal terms, terribly expensive episodes in the history of New Zealand. And yet, despite all of that, we have continued with our plan. We have improved the tax system to change the incentives, sir, so that New Zealanders are encouraged and rewarded for getting ahead under their own steam. They are supported if they want to go out and make a better future for their family. And the incentives are set up to discourage them, sir, from continuing in the consumption-led debt orgy that they were in under the past 9 years. So we've ensured that the government parts of our economy are more efficient. We view every tax dollar that we spend as like spending our own money, and we think New Zealanders would want us to be just as careful with their money as we would be with our own. And that's why we are insisting that our public services deliver faster, better, smarter outcomes for New Zealanders, and we are insisting that they prioritise the frontline services, sir, that New Zealanders expect when they go to the doctor, when they go to school, when they phone the police, when they look to those core government services. It's the people on the front line that matter, sir, not the back-end office in Wellington, and those are the parts of the public sector that we are continuing to support in this budget and through these supplementary estimates, and that we're continuing to ask our government sector to roll out and to improve all the time. So we've continued reduction a reliance on foreign lenders. We have cut red tape to help that business sector continue to grow and create the sort of jobs that we want. And we're continuing to improve the education system so that our New Zealanders, our young New Zealanders, as they grow up and head into the workforce, have the skills and the confidence to go ahead and create a great life for them and their families, and more importantly to do it here in New Zealand and not feel that our economy is not a good place to be, that this is a place where they can get ahead, where they can create a safe and prosperous future for their families. That's the vision of this government. That's what we've been continuing to roll out over the past 2.5 years, and this government is certainly another step on the path to that. One of the things I do want to focus on, though, that has been specific to the particular pieces of legislation in front of us and to the particular time period, of course, sir, is the rebuilding of Canterbury. And as I mentioned in my opening comments, this has been a series of events that could not have been anticipated by anyone, and that, sir, it almost seems shameful to even talk about it in monetary terms, but of course we must. We must look at the dollar cost of rebuilding Canterbury. And it is a task that can't properly be described in this House. I think most members of the House have probably had a chance to visit the province since the 4th of September and see the extent of the devastation. And can I just remind this House and anyone listening that that devastation is an ongoing saga for us all. It's not a fixed amount. I know that when we talked last to the Reserve Bank and the Finance and Expenditure Committee, the estimates that they were looking at then and the estimates certainly in this budget talk of a $15 to $20 billion rebuild cost, and some later estimates have suggested that even that was conservative. And, sir, those numbers, those estimates, were before the latest round of pretty terrifying, actually, earthquakes on Monday the 13th of June, when we had a 5.7 rip through the region at around 1 o'clock in the afternoon, followed by a 6.3, as big as the deadly February quake, come through at 2:30. Those shakes alone have seen another 94 buildings in the CBD scheduled for demolition. They have seen untold further damage in the suburbs. They have seen continuing heartbreak to the people in the eastern suburbs who have had to work to dig out their homes once more. And so this budget sets up a fund of $5.5 billion for the rebuilding of Canterbury, and it is a tangible statement that this government is making to the people of Canterbury that no matter what the economic conditions, we will back the rebuilding of our province. We will be behind Canterbury, and we will stay with Canterbury for as long as it takes, whatever it takes, because it's our second biggest city. It is the home of our world-beating Crusaders, well, they certainly will be soon. And, sir, it is a part of New Zealand that we are indelibly committed to. On top of that $5.5 billion, sir, there's, of course, the extra $3.3 billion. These are $1 billion, if I'm saying it too quickly. $3.3 billion that will be pumped out from the government through EQC and ACC and the like. And, of course, the government contribution to the rebuild is one small part of what will happen there. That sort of spending in Canterbury will help to lift GDP, and that's the good news for my region, and that's what I want to touch on. That our region, devastated as it is right now, exhausted as it is, stressed and at their wits' end at times, can have confidence in the future, because the spending of $20 billion or more in that region over the upcoming years is going to create an economic boom time for that region, and rightly deserved, sir. I want to talk, sir, about the fact that this budget put more money than ever before into health and education. More money than ever before. An extra $2.2 billion has gone into health, and this from the government that has made changes to the health system in these tough economic times, that has seen an extra 20,000 elective surgery. It's an extra 1,000 nurses, an extra 500 doctors, $54.5 million more going into maternity support services. And, sir, that's one that I'm very, very proud to talk about on the streets of Selwyn in my communities. That support for the maternity service, for the well child checks, is one that I think we can be very proud of. And, sir, remember that this is from the government who one of our first actions in taking office was to ensure every New Zealand woman that has Herceptin would be funded and paid for by the government, and that families wouldn't have to watch their loved ones die of breast cancer for lack of Herceptin funding. So that's something I'll be continuing to be very proud of. Sir, can we also talk briefly about water? Because water is very, very important to my economy in Canterbury, and particularly the region of Selwyn. And I, for one, am not an apologist of the fact that New Zealand should make the most of its natural advantages if we do so well and sustainably. And the $35 million we've set aside for irrigation, the investigation of irrigation projects, sir, is one to be commended. But I will say with that, there is a rider, sir, that we have to do it well. And that's why it's important that we've also set aside a further $15 million to the Freshwater Cleanup Fund, taking that fund to well over $260 million going into freshwater cleanup. Sir, I'm very excited at the future for Canterbury. I'm very excited by the fact that this national-led government is standing behind it, and we have a very, very bright future ahead of us while we have the Minister of Finance, the Honourable Bill English, in charge, who has taken this economy from the cot case that it was when we inherited it in 2008 and has put it back on a projection, sir, where we have 4% growth forecast for next year. And in fact, that's conservative. The Reserve Bank are more bullish. They're more bullish in their projections. NZIER are equally bullish. These forecasts have been borne out time and time again by the leading forecasting agencies. 170,000 new jobs over 4 years, Mr. Speaker. That's what that sort of growth means. It means 170,000 new jobs, because this government has delivered a strong, sustainable, trustworthy program of economic growth that will see us build a better future for all New Zealanders, where there is more prosperity, where there are safer communities, and where they have the chance to get ahead here in New Zealand and not have to head off overseas or be indebted to our offshore lenders. Sir, it is a budget that I am very proud to support.
Mr. Speaker. The question is that the amendment be agreed to. I call the